This should be one of the top stories in the country right now, yet it's received zero press coverage. A top UK government official admitted live on television that they considered seizing COVID-positive children from private homes up and down the country, separating them from their parents and placing them in quarantine isolation facilities. Take a look at what slipped out when Nadine Dorries, who was a health minister at the time, appeared on GB News.
When COVID happened, Jeremy contacted me as a health minister and said, you've got to speak to Matt. It was at the time the Nightingale hospitals were being built. You've got to tell him that you
Matt Hancock.
Yeah, you don't put sick people in the hospitals. You follow a zero COVID policy. My wife's family have experience of this. When someone tests positive, you take them from their home and you take them to an isolation centre and you leave them there in the isolation centre. That's the only way you can beat COVID. And I said, Jeremy, the British public will not stand for mothers and fathers and families and children being removed from their family and their home and put in isolation. And he says, who said they won't? And I said, well, the Behaviour and Insights team, who I've discussed this with, they won't wear it. And he said, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Show me the evidence for that, because I don't believe it. That's the way we have to deal with this, is a zero COVID policy. Now, we would still probably be in some sort of lockdown if Jeremy Hunt had been made Prime Minister.
Look at China today.
Instead of Boris Johnson.
To reiterate, prominent players within the government, Jeremy Hunt chief amongst them, wanted to directly copy China's draconian method of kidnapping both parents and children from their homes in the United Kingdom and sending them to quarantine camps. And remember, even Sage thought that the British public would never accept lockdown, never mind being forcibly torn from their homes, until Italy did so. Professor Lockdown himself, Professor Pants Down, Neil Ferguson, told The Times, quote, China is a communist one-party state, we said. We couldn't get away with it in Europe, we thought, and then Italy did it and we realised we could. Given this shocking new revelation, which has received virtually no media coverage, what could they be planning to get away with this coming winter? Don't forget, the guy who called for this is running for Prime Minister. He could be our next leader, and he could take charge in early September, right when they're going to push for COVID restrictions to be reintroduced. Government ministers have said lockdown measures will return if necessary to protect NHS hospitals. Yeah, the same NHS hospitals that were 40% empty at the height of the first outbreak. We have 1,300 excess deaths per week in the UK right now, primarily caused by untreated illnesses that went untreated because of lockdown. Listen, I know all sane, rational people want to believe that this is over, but there's a whole army of cult COVIDians and a phalanx of control-freak technocrats who are waiting for autumn in feverish anticipation at the prospect of bringing it all back. To get exclusive content, early access, behind-the-scenes stuff, and to personally interact with me, please sign up for my community at pauljosephwatson.locals.com. Link in description, and thank you for your generous support.